There's a kind of man who is increasingly rare. He works hard at things nobody sees him work hard at. He goes to the gym alone, finishes the run alone, makes the meal alone, reads the book alone, learns the skill alone, fails at the thing alone, gets back up alone. He has never made a workout video. He has never told you what he ate today. He has never posted the screenshot of his progress. And from the outside, he looks like he's withdrawn from the culture. From the inside, he's doing something the culture has almost forgotten was possible. 6 specific traits run through almost every man who lives this way. Here they are. If you've ever noticed that you prefer to do hard things alone, that you find performance for an audience faintly exhausting, that you'd rather get something right in private than get praise for getting it right in public, you're carrying a specific set of psychological traits that the modern culture quietly punishes but quietly depends on. The traits aren't loneliness in disguise. They aren't social fear. They aren't avoidance. They're a documented orientation toward effort that has been disappearing as the culture has reorganized itself around visibility. Here are the 6. You measure your effort against yourself, not against the room. When you push hard at something, the comparison that matters to you is between today's version of you and yesterday's version. Other people's effort is interesting to you in the abstract, but it isn't the scale you use. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control, the documented orientation first studied by Julian Rotter in the 1960s, in which a person's sense of success or failure tracks their own effort rather than external conditions. People with strong internal locus tend not to need witnesses, because the witness wouldn't be measuring the thing that matters to them anyway. The only person whose evaluation they trust is the version of them from yesterday. You can sit inside difficulty without needing someone to see you doing it. When the workout gets hard, when the work gets boring, when the practice stops feeling rewarding, you don't reach for your phone, you don't post about it, you don't tell anyone. You just stay in the difficulty. This is what self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, calls intrinsic motivation. The activity itself is the reward. The witness adds nothing because the witness wasn't generating the reward to begin with. Men who train alone, write alone, build alone, study alone share this trait. They aren't refusing community. They're refusing the addition of community to an activity that was already complete without it. You're suspicious of validation that arrives too quickly. When someone praises you for something you barely worked at, the praise lands wrong. You don't trust it. The praise that lands true is the kind that comes after years of unwitnessed effort, usually from someone who knew you before the result was visible. This isn't humility. It's a calibration problem. Your nervous system has learned to read the relationship between effort and signal carefully, and praise that doesn't match the effort registers as noise. The culture has trained most people to take any positive signal as input. You've learned to filter for honest signal, which means most of the positive input around you reads as static. You'd rather do a thing badly alone than do it well with the wrong company. This is the autonomy trait, and it's stronger in unwitnessed effort men than in almost any other personality profile. The activity isn't valuable to you if it requires you to perform a version of yourself you wouldn't otherwise perform. You'll skip the group ride if the group changes how you ride. You'll skip the group dinner if the dinner requires you to be more talkative than you actually are. This isn't social anxiety. It's a clear understanding that the activity and the audience are separable, and that the wrong audience contaminates the activity in ways that make the activity no longer worth doing. Most people would rather do the thing in the wrong company than skip it. You wouldn't. You don't perform for cameras even when one is pointed at you. In any group setting where there's an implicit social camera, a meeting, a party, a gathering with screens out, most people make small, unconscious adjustments to their behavior. The voice changes slightly. The posture firms. The opinions get edited. Psychologist Mark Snyder, in research beginning in the 1970s, called this self-monitoring, and documented that people vary widely in how much they do it. Men who train alone, work alone, live mostly without performance tend to be very low self-monitors. The same behavior shows up regardless of whether anyone is watching. This isn't a refusal to engage with social norms. It's the absence of a circuit most people have running constantly without knowing it. You can leave a room without explaining yourself. When you're done, you go. When the conversation is over, you stop. When the social event has reached the end of what it has to offer you, you exit. You don't construct elaborate excuses, you don't soften the leaving, you don't perform reluctance, you don't feel. This is the comfort with being misread that ties the other 5 traits together. Each of the previous traits requires as a prerequisite that you can tolerate other people not understanding what you're doing or why. The internal locus, the intrinsic motivation, the resistance to cheap validation, the refusal to perform with the wrong audience, the low self-monitoring, all of them require you to be okay with not being seen accurately by the people around you in the moment. Here's what all 6 traits have in common. None of them are deficits. All of them are an orientation. You develop them because at some point the activity itself became more valuable to you than the audience for the activity. That shift is increasingly rare in a culture organized around visibility. It used to be common. It used to be the default. The traits aren't strange. They're old. They're just running in a culture that has stopped recognizing them. One thing worth naming: not everyone who does things alone has these 6 traits. Some men train alone because they don't have anyone to train with. Some work alone because they've been excluded or have excluded themselves out of avoidance. Some prefer solitude because being with people is too painful, not because being alone is sufficient. The reframe in this video applies to the men whose solo effort is a positive orientation, a real preference for unwitnessed work, not to the men whose solo effort is a symptom of withdrawal, depression, or social fear. If your solitude feels like protection, that's worth honest reckoning. If it feels like quiet, the traits above are probably yours. There's something quietly powerful about a man who works at things nobody is watching him work at. He has stopped negotiating with the room. He has stopped editing his effort for an imagined audience. He has stopped asking the question that most of the modern culture is built around asking, what will this look like to other people, and replaced it with an older question, the one his ancestors asked when there were no cameras and no metrics and no public scores. The question is whether the thing got done. The question is whether he kept his word to himself. The audience for that question is just him, and the answer, when he gets it right, doesn't require anyone else to hear it. If you've spent years feeling out of step with a culture that wants you to perform every part of your life, this might be the moment to consider that you've been carrying an old skill, one that produces results. Most performance can't, and one that has been quietly disappearing from the world for 40 years. The traits are real. The orientation is real. And the work done in private is the work that produces the people the culture eventually depends on. You're not antisocial. You're not avoidant. You're not failing at modern life. You're someone whose effort is oriented inward rather than outward, who measures progress against yourself rather than the room, and who has, deliberately or not, opted out of the performance economy that most of the culture is now built around. Silent awareness exists to name the quietly different ways your mind works, the patterns nobody else seems to talk about with accuracy. If that's the kind of channel you want more of, subscribe. The project only continues because people who recognize themselves here choose to stick around.